Hello there, and thank you for joining us on this edition of Citizens Hour, your democratic citizens engaging and current affairs radio program. We're coming to you live from West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM Dakar, and we're also streaming live on WADR.org. Well, Citizens Hour comes to you live every Saturday, 10:30 a.m., bringing you more engaging conversation. I am Imo Edet, and we thank you for staying with us on this edition of the program. Now, on today's program, former Nigerian president and ECOWAS elder statesman Goodluck Jonathan has once again drawn attention to the fundamental principles that should guide democratic governance. His remarks come at a time when democracy across Africa continues to face significant pressures from disputed elections and constitutional changes to military takeovers, restrictions on civic space, and growing public distrust in political institutions. Now, while election remains a central feature of democracy, the bigger question is whether African countries are upholding the values that makes democracy meaningful, respecting the rule of law, accountability, separation of powers, protection of citizens' rights, and peaceful transfer of power. So, what exactly are the principles that should underpin democracy? And African political leaders doing enough to protect them? Well, and for our second topic, we will turn to neighboring the Gambia, where opposition parties are facing a major political test as the country moves towards the December 2026 presidential election, where so much has happened in the past 24 hours. And we'll be asking what is standing in the way of opposition unity in the Gambia, and can the coalition still be rescued? Well, stay with us as our guests will be providing answers to all of these questions and more.
Citizens Hour on West Africa Democracy Radio. It's your time to speak.
All right, thank you for staying with us. We'll begin with our first topic, and we already have our guests online. Beyond elections, is African democracy losing its fundamental principles? Well, as I mentioned in my intro, the elder statesman, Goodluck Jonathan, believes that democracy must be about more than simply holding elections, warning that democracy can become a facade if its basic principles and institutions are weakened. Now, these include the need for stronger internal democracy among political parties, respecting their own rules, and should take responsibility for producing credible leaders. Well, he also touched on the judiciary, which must remain independent and impartial, and of course faithful to the law. Finally, the icing on the cake, the structure of African democracy. Now he's suggesting that African countries should consider adapting elements of other systems, including Switzerland's collective presidency, to prevent excessive concentration of political power in one individual. Well, let's get neck deep into this conversation as we bring on board our guests for this first part. We actually do have two of them online. First, we have Mr. Kupep K. Double Cad. He is the Executive Director, Center for Innovative Governance and Sustainable Development. Mr. Dabagat is a seasoned African governance, peace, and security expert with extensive experience in policy advocacy, civil society coordination, and regional development across West Africa. Good morning, Mr. Kupep, and it's good to see you. Welcome to the program.
It's good to be here once more.
Indeed. Well, also joining us, we do have Melissa Juicy Simo. She's a policy economist and international development practitioner at the West Africa Civil Society Institute, WACSI. Good morning, Melissa, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
Indeed, it's good to see you. I'd like to start with Mr. Dabagad. If democracy is more than elections, according to former President Goodluck Jonathan, what should citizens expect from political parties, governments, courts, and leaders between elections?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to this program and for this specific question and the topic as well. You know, democracy as a category of governance, has had a lot of connotations over time. So it's right to ask this kind of question at this point, observing the different trends within the African terrain. But well, I think what your question draws attention to right now is something very critical that we have to be able to, zero in on. Let me start by asking two fundamental questions. Basically, based on how you have framed your question on the flyer. The first question I would like to ask is whether there is, in fact, an African democracy. Do we have what we can say there is a category of democracy that we call the African democracy? Well, we know the basic principles of democracy, some of which you have just mentioned: impartial judiciary, popular participation, elections, and what have you. Yeah. But from my angle, and also looking at the African terrain, sorry, I'm trying to adjust my cap.
You look good in it, by the way.
Thank you. So from where I stand, I asked this question, and I would say basically there is no category of democracy called the African democracy. Maybe it's time we start talking towards that. We start thinking towards that. And I think that is where Goodluck Ebele Jonathan's comment comes, into full force, because it draws attention to the need for African democracies to adopt elements, perhaps, of other kinds of systems. Now, the second question I will ask talks about the foundations of democracy, which is what we appear to perhaps be losing in the present democratic era in Africa. I think I would draw our attention to three basic elements that I think I would say were the things that are responsible for democracy in Africa, were the trends that actually brought democracy in Africa. The first is the colonial system of domination and exploitation. Now, the British came, French came, the Germans came, the Belgians came, and they instituted systems they wanted to use to exploit what they could exploit from Africa. And in the process, at some point, they realized they had to give independence. And in that regard, they brought in some democratic principles, and they used that to grant independence. Now we got independence, and we came into democracy within Africa. Now that is the first. The second trend was the military incursion in politics, through which eventually they had to, because of the pressure, the global as well as the citizenship pressure, a lot of the military regimes at some point had to give way, and because of that, they already put together democratization processes and put together constitutions. And, there we go. We have new democratic systems.
Indeed. Well, let me cross over to Melissa, who is I'm sure itching to lend a voice to this. I would like to, while you may want to comment on the first question, but can a country truly be considered democratic simply because it holds elections?
Thank you so much. I think that's a wonderful question. And there's no straight answer to that question. Elections, by definition, is a core show of democracy. Because what is democracy? Democracy is basically a government ruled by the people, of the people. That's what we know democracy to be. At the core of democracy is the people. And so elections, practicing elections is one form of lending citizenry voice. However, to say that a country is fully democratic because of elections alone is flawed, because when we talk about the principles of democratic, we are talking about the things that must exist for us to say we are in a full democracy. So elections is just one of them. It's a show, but it's not the full it's not the full demonstration. So in a democratic system, other things that must be in place are things like accountability. The people that had the reason why democracy stands is because the people are able to find representation of their voices in the policies, in the discussions, in the decisions that are being made. And when those decisions are being made, they are equally supposed to find expression they're equally supposed to find their voices through accountability systems. So with the absence of accountability, one of those core fundamental principles are broken. Other aspects, and elections is just one part of it. How about the independence of the elections? So are we also saying that because elections were practiced and were not practiced in a free and fair manner, then democracy is in play? We can't agree to that. So it's not only that elections happened, it is the quality of in the practices that surrounded the existence of that electoral process. Now I'll add one more part, which is just please, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, so I'll add one more point, which is the point on the respect of the fundamental human rights. That is one of the fundamental principles around democracy. And this is just counterintuitive. So if we are saying that democracy is supposed to be anchored, but democracy is when the people are at the forefront of their own governance, we are saying that anything that hinders the freedom of a person to fully express or fully participate goes against the norms of democracy. So you cannot talk about a full democracy when the people who are supposed to be at the forefront of that democracy are held bound in captivity, when the laws of fundamental freedom for these people are not upheld. One of those examples is the fundamental freedom of speech. And we are all too common with the phrase that says, freedom of speech is guaranteed, but freedom after speech is not guaranteed. So if I cannot express myself and give my most true view about a situation, how then can I be able to choose the best person to govern? Or how then can I be able to express my most heartfelt desires around governance in a state? So to your question, yes, election is a show, or a show of the intention towards democratic practices, but it is not only elections. We have to talk about things around accountability. We need to talk about the quality of the elections that we have. We need to talk about respect of fundamental human rights. We need to talk about the respect of the rule of law, because if there are people in power, even if I lend my vote to you, and there is no respect of the rule of law, then we don't have a true democracy. So democracy is not one. Democracy is all the fundamental pillars coming together to form the whole.
In other words, let me just stay with you. In other words, different countries in West Africa are practicing their own different democracy. For instance, Togo or Benin. We can also say Nigeria. We can say Cote d'Ivoire, even Ghana. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and that is exactly what democracy should be. Now, I'll go back to what my previous speaker said was fundamental, and I'll pick from one of the points that he said. He said, the question around whether or not there is an African democracy remains on the table. And even if there is an African democracy, the point of democracy is not to have a homogeneous system. In fact, democracy by definition has different types of democracy. They are different from fundamentally, there are different types of democracy. So we can't, in adopting it, because what Africa did is we adopted a system, recognizing that Africa had other systems of governance. We adopted democracy. So if we adopted democracy, each country should be able to adopt and adapt democracy to what suits the context. Again, at the heart of democracy is the voice of the people. The voice of what the people, how the people want to be governed in Nigeria. It's not the same like in Ghana. So those dynamics may exist. However, when we talk of a united Africa, there is need for us now to unite the different principles that the different countries have adopted to be able to have what we call the African perspective around democracy, which, in my opinion, currently does not exist.
Well, Mr. Dabagat, how difficult would it be to adopt a general principle? And in your picture framing, what will an African democracy look like?
Well, thank you so much. Well, that thing is not yet here. We are not yet at that point where we have an African democracy. So we will not be able to recognize what it is supposed to look like. But however, I mean, the basic principles of democracy are very, very straightforward. Yes, we start with elections, but not flawed elections, for example. We start with credible elections. Secondly, we start with constitutionalism, for example, not constitutional manipulations that we see all around when elections are being prepared for. Also, we have a system that is supposed to deliver on the needs and aspirations of the people, because that is the end of democracy. Democracy is supposed to reach that point where it is able to deliver on the aspirations of the people. Also, we need a system where civic space is not being restricted. People can express their view according to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and all that, And then we don't need a democracy that suffers from widespread public distrust, which is what we see in Africa. We need a system where there is no impunity, where the rule of law governs, where the rule of law is sustained. That is the kind of democracy that we want to see across Africa. Yes, it is difficult for us to, at this point, with our context, and the factors that hold in our societies at the moment, to have that. But yes, that is what we should be aiming at. And that is why I said realizing the African democracy is a product of conversation. And perhaps this conversation contributes to that wider conversation that will help us to produce an African democratic paradigm.
Mr. Dabagat, do you also think that the bad leadership that we are currently experiencing across the region is as a result of the products being pushed out by political parties?
Well, it's deeper than that. But yes, political parties push the products out, of course. But it's
Mr. Dabagat, are you there? Okay, I think we lost Mr. Dabagat at that point. Melissa, let me cross over to you. You can take up that question.
Yes, I mean, that is a very good question. When you just asked the question, what came to my mind is, what are the enablers or the barriers to bringing in? Please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yes. So what are the enablers or the barriers that exist in standing for office? And I do agree that the quality of people or candidates that are being pushed out also affects the kind of governance that we have. But that is also because of the incentives around why we put these people there. So that's why I'm talking about the enablers and the barriers. If you think about the cost of funding a political campaign in Africa, it is exorbitant. And we have normalized it. It's normalized that for you to be able to run into office, you're supposed to have this amount of money, and you're supposed to have this amount of maybe godfathers to back up your campaign. And all those factors contribute to the kind of candidates that we have, and it contributes to the kind of governance that we have in turn. So the question we should be asking ourselves is, what are the enablers to stand in political office that we have accepted as a people, and what are the barriers? Because the barriers are high, and I don't even want to talk about the barriers to getting into political office for a woman. I mean, we keep asking, why don't we have more women in political spaces? Because the barriers are higher. I mean, so yes, the kind of candidates that we put in office definitely affects the governance and the incentives that put those candidates there. I mean, if you have someone that is of a certain social class, you're able to consolidate the interests of this particular social class, of course we'll want to put you there. Is that the best person that can represent the interests of the people? Have we created barriers too high for the people who truly could be leading our nations to reach? Is financial incentive the only measure? And so those questions exist. But yes, the kind of candidate we push for definitely affects governance.
All right, we are being joined by our last guest, Mr. Tochukwu Emmanuel Femene, governance expert and a fellow, the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. Mr. Tochukwu is passionate about good governance and democracy, and he has lots of ideas about this. Mr. Tochukwu, thank you so much for finding time to join us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Omo. Thank you for having me, and afternoon, Melissa and Mr. Dabugat.
Well, it's been a long time I saw you, and you seem to have grown gray beards.
I'm aging gracefully.
Indeed. Well, we've been looking at the type of democracy that former President Goodluck Jonathan mentioned during his lecture last week, and we've also talked about what an African democracy can look like. Maybe you can give us that picture, what you feel an African democracy should look like.
Okay, probably before the question you asked Melissa and
Mr. Dabugat,
you put it in the context of West Africa. So do you want me to make it West Africa or Africa in general?
You can talk about West Africa, it's fine.
Okay, so let me start with West Africa. There's a reason I want to contextualize it for West Africa.
Okay.
I think there's a common strain that is missing, if I may use the word common, which is we've not defined what narrative, short-term, long-term, medium-term, immediate in the context of elections, because it's now looking like our elections is what define us as democratic countries, right? We work towards 4 years. We don't work towards the next 50 years. And this is because we've not had a foundation of saying we are having a unified ideology. We are having what I call a clear-cut development plan, backed by policy, backed by law, regardless of political affiliations, regardless of election cycles. Now, I like the fact that you brought up the context of Goodluck Jonathan. He did something that was very instrumental just before he lost his election, which was the national confab. That was going to be like the second time Nigerians were going to sit down to start discussing her future. If you go around African states, and that is why you see what happened in the Sahel states in the last 3 years, they started having their narratives. They started having their discussions of what their democracy will look like. And it became very clear that if their democracy is going to progress, they will not go to the path of democracy. They went to the path of coup, but you could see a rallying ideology for the thinking and for the welfare and for the egalitarian nature of their people. Although it's not democratic, right? But you could see that kind of discourse, and you could see that kind of block that started forming, such that a group of them say they are cutting out of ECOWAS. Now, when you come back to, permit me just to use for the context of Nigeria is a big population, it looks like the big brother, whatever they call it. I'm not saying in that context, but I just want to situate Nigeria, okay? We've stopped having that kind of conversations from the time we lost everything that we started discussing in the national confab. I lead a lot of groups on the students level, on the community level, on think tank and everything. And you know what I discovered? One of the strongest things that you have to set people call it putting a rallying vision and everything. I think it's good, but it's much more than that, which is the intelligentsia that comes together to form it, of which their personal character, their association ideals, and their long-term vision is what is going to push it. And I can tell you that in my little experience, or with some of people I've journeyed with, some of them you might know in Nigeria, I discovered that that is actually the foundation for where this thing starts off. Because if you look at democratic countries that has done their experiment as well, whether it's in the UK, whether it's in the United States, whether it's when you look at countries like India, that also has a very big population. You look at the country like Portugal, you look at the country like Indonesia, that also has a very big population. You discover that that foundation is what has been entrenched, such that regardless of political affiliations or political election circles, somehow there seems to be a direction towards that picture of what we are building for our people in the next 20 years, what they should represent to the world. So I think, as tacky as that is, or as subtle as that is the kind of conversations we are still trying to get as a people, not as individuals. Because if you notice, in Africa or in West Africa, and maybe permit me to put in a context of Africa, because I'm also careful when I talk about Africa, because different countries are practicing different way of leadership for their people. Okay, exactly. Okay, you can't say, I can't call what is happening in Rwanda or in East Africa and Uganda like what is happening in West Africa. Okay, so when it comes to like a country like even Ghana, who is trying to do their best for defining election or defining governance for her people, you discover that that foundation of what we seek to achieve with a national rolling plan of the next 50 years or 5 or 100 years is just lacking. So it looks like we only work from election cycle to election cycle. However, I like something that I'm noticing as I emerging, and I saw Madam Melissa saying it now very, very brilliantly, that we are beginning to come to that consciousness where we begin to know that, okay, whether you like it or not, whether there's corruption, whether there's no corruption, whether it's election in 4 years, but we need to start having these kind of conversations. It's now becoming mainstream. I envisage that in the next 5 years, possibly by 2030, whether we like it or not, all African players, especially West African players, must come to this table and decide this is what we want to see for our people. Because look at what is about happening to Africa in the next 10 years or by 2050. It's clear we're going to be the largest population that will be the workforce to the whole world, even down to China. In Australia, the European population is already declining. They already begin to make schemes and initiatives that they are going to start repatriating Africa to come and meet up with their workforce. So what is going to happen to the indigenous Africans and their states, where the strength of our youth will now going to start working there? It's a lot of discussion. That is why we said we need to start mainstream that kind of conversation now. Because by the time that discussion is mainstream, we now have a direction of our governance.
Mr. Dabagat, Tochku talked about military coups, which we are seeing in across our sub-region. Of course, the AES is grand on the picture as it is. Does this actually point to the fact that there is a failure on the part of government, which is contributing to the resurgence of military rule, and that the citizen seems to be tired in giving way to this form of governance?
Yes, thank you so much. Now we are back to where I had started from. I feel that the popular, so to say, the popular welcoming of military rules, military dictatorships in different countries. I mean, we saw it happen, right? From Guinea to Mali to Burkina Faso to Niger. And we saw how the people actually jubilated when the news of the military, as far as, what was that Central African country where the coup happened, So the citizens are responding to the fact that the systems are not meeting their needs. And that should be the end of democracy. Democracy should be able to provide for the people's needs and aspirations. So yes, the rise of military dictatorships across West Africa shows that West Africans are ready for that conversation about this, you know. But I think flipping it the other way around, rather, the conversation should be more around governance, not democracy as a paradigm, because governance, good governance is what we want to see, whether it is democratic or whatever. The first thing that an African young person these days wants to see is to see that the government is doing the right and the good things and producing the right results that will bring prosperity, that will bring progress, that will bring development for the people. And the African systems all are just not getting there. You know, they're just not getting there. So I think the framing of such a conversation about democracy in Africa should come from the dimension of governance, and then it judges whether democracy is a good system to take up. And if it is a good system to take up, how do we as Africans or as West Africans now step it down to the ground? And what are our contexts so that we are able to draw on those and use them to adapt democracy in our countries? Military incursions are just symptoms of, you know, a broken system.
Melissa, when we focus on West Africa, I mean, citizens are becoming increasingly disillusioned with what we call democracy, because elections have not necessarily translated into better living conditions. Well, do you agree with this thought, that if we can solidify and draw out what our democracy can be in West Africa, it can actually be adopted by other regions of the continent?
I'll start with talking about the first part of your, just citizenry approach or perception around democracy. And there's, just as you're saying, there are divided ways in which we are seeing democracy in West Africa. So if you look at Sahelian West Africa, you're seeing something different happening there altogether. If you look at Ghana, Nigeria, all of those are different forms of democracy, and I want to acknowledge that diversity before giving my response. And I would also add that the people, if you look at critics of democracy as a concept, one of the most strong oppositions or people that have come against democracy is Winston Churchill, and he said something that I want to quote and then dive right into the answer. And he said, the best argument against democracy is what? It's a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. And that is very true. So my first proposition would be that do we really understand democracy? So before talking about the African definition or the West African definition, whether it could be exported or not, I would say that the current system that we have, the current system that people are disgruntled about, part of it is also a poor understanding of what that system is. And so I won't go ahead quickly to demonize democracy or to applaud it until the people have understood perfectly what democracy is and how to adopt it to their unique context. So that's the first part. Now, can West Africa model a way of democracy or principles of democracy that can be exported to other nations? Yes, West Africa can. In fact, I would use the case of Ghana. Many people celebrate Ghana as a beacon of hope when it comes to democracy, because you'd see election works, you'd see a good attempt towards accountability, you'd see different respect of the rule of law, at least to an acceptable extent. And many countries come here to Ghana to learn about what is happening. There is that enthusiasm. So can that be moved? Can that spread across the region? Yes. However, we understand that the ECOWAS that is supposed to be championing that, but that conversation has its own challenges in the now. And I think the real test is, can ECOWAS stand the test of time what is the future of the AES? Are they able to mobilize and have something that can teach so a way of bringing democracy in, that can also teach the rest of the world? I think there's a bit of optimism. If I'm to be honest, there is a bit of optimism, but there is a lot more complexity. So I wouldn't say it's a yes or a no, but I would say there are prospects and there are things to learn from both of the systems that we are seeing. We are seeing from West Africa within ECOWAS and West Africa AES. So I think there's something to learn from both.
All right, as we round off this first part of our conversation, Tochiko, I'd like to throw this to you because now we've brought in ECOWAS into the picture. What role can this body play to ensure that they protect constitutional democracy the way it is?
Okay, one of the things that some of us are advocating is that the emergence of a think tank among them, because they come for their meetings, we are being challenged on the matters of economy, we are being challenged on the matters of security. In fact, recently, there's the discussion of what's the name of the currency that we are trying to adopt even as a continent. We're having the discourse of the African Free Continental Trade Agreement, but there's one particular matter that is not on that table, which is governance based on democratic dividends. And just because it's clear that even the citizens, their rights are not being respected, you go to court, both locally or even to ECOWAS courts, like we've seen, certain kind of matters have gone to the courts and they're still being prolonged. So we're trying to see if we could advocate a kind of thinking where we have emergence of different kind of think tanks, because what think tank does in formation of states, especially at this level where we are, is that they explore all the avenues. And interestingly, Africa, and in the context of West Africa, seems to be the emerging focus of the world, whether we like it or not. I mean, you can imagine, like last year, Nigeria scored 105 in 140 countries on the innovative index, but we came number one when it came to unicorn valuated businesses. So it's clear now that with the rising population coming from this guy called Nigeria, or coming from Ghana, coming from all our African states, the world is beginning to look at this narrow patch of place that has population, that has ingenious people, but are not having dividends of democracy. They are having sophisticated intellects, even in the diaspora. So for me, I think I want us to start having discussions on subject matters, homegrown solutions that are pragmatic, that have practice that can deal with the issues, especially in the immediate, and say, okay, these are the parameters we're going to put on when we come to the African Union. I mean, I think it's time for us, we have those parameters coming from AU, but we don't have those kind of parameters coming from ECOWAS that are clearly defined. There may be 5 of them, there may be 6 of them, well thought out, and say, you know what, as a block, this is what we need to start looking at. Because very soon, whether we like it or not, in the next 10 years, we're going to start talking about having a unifying currency. And when we start having this unifying currency, the question will come up. When we are doing the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, especially those of you in the bloc in West Africa, how successful was it? Because if we have gotten it right, then it means that we can scale it. I'm sure by that time, African markets would have been one of the most loved market. So for me, I just want to bring one matter, because for me, it's all about the ideology, it's all about the philosophy, then how it cascades down, and the people understand it down. That is, the citizens, and they take it up. And those who represent us, by the time they are sitting on those tables, they speak as subject matter expert. And because of key performance indicators, these things actually have been done. I think the time of rhetorics have actually passed. Governance is now becoming like a matter of state business.
Well,
so West Africa must get it right.
All right, let me cross over to Melissa for her last thought on this. Bringing on board ECOWAS, making ECOWAS and the African Union play a central role in protecting constitutional democracy. As your last thought, Melissa.
I'm sorry, I lost you for a bit.
Yes, your last thought as we round off this first part of the conversation, what ECOWAS needs to do, and the African Union, the role they need to play in protecting constitutional democracy.
Yes, so thank you for that question. I would say that first of all, our response to the listeners, I mean, our response to our regional bodies have to be better. Most times when we talk about these regional bodies, the story is always negative. It's like they're not doing anything, the work is not being done. But we have had significant successes by the AU and by the ECOWAS in our regions. So the first thing is for us to have a good approach, or a positive approach towards the role that these bodies can play in fostering Africa's governance. I would also say that for ECOWAS as a body, I mean, Africa has never needed to come together as one as it has now. That's ECOWAS and the African Union. And so I think the onus falls upon them right now to galvanize every resource possible to ensure the unity of Africa, whether it's through trade, whether it's through just policies, but every resource that is needed needs to be galvanized to bring together the African people. And the last part of it that I'll say is that we have a responsibility of consolidating the African history, the African way of doing things, because what we have for most people right now are just adopted systems. It is a challenge for us, for Africa as a whole, for West Africa, to think about what are our own systems that are true and genuine to who we are as a people. And the onus falls again on these bodies that are representing us. Yeah.
Well, I actually forgot to mention, Mr. Dabaga, the role of younger people. I know Mr. Tochukwu talked about the ever growing population on not just West Africa, but across
Yes.
the African continent. What role can you say young Africans can play? Civil society, very key, and of course, the media in this.
Yes, I think, well, the young people are very key, but their role in this process will also join up with the role of the regional economic communities and the regional and the continental body, which is AU. You know, funny enough, now that we're having the conversation, I just recall that where we are with the African Union, with ECOWAS, and all the regional bodies, was set in 1981, you know, under the Lagos Plan of Action, you know, and I think we have reached a point where such a plan of action needs to happen, where we can have an orientation that talks about the youth, that talks about the women, that talks about democracy, since we have agreed that democracy would be the system we want to see across Africa. Then we must do the needful. The regional communities must take, you know, charge. Even what I think Tochukwu was pointing at. Again, it needs ECOWAS, it needs AU to organize the process. As well, what my sister Melissa was mentioning, I think we need the regional economic communities to come in and show the way. Because when you look at these regional integration bodies, you see that even inherently, these regional bodies are not democratic. So how can they, you know, be the leaders of democracy? Let's take ECOWAS, for example. We know that the ECOWAS parliament is only advisory. They sit, they take resolutions, but they are still advisory. Also, the ECOWAS Court of Justice is still only an advisory body. You know, they just share opinions about legal issues, you know. So it is important for them to take the lead, because from the Lagos Plan of Action, when you read it, you realize that at this point, we are supposed to have transcended where we are. We are supposed to have now been moving towards democratic regional institutions that set the pace for the countries with the regions internally. So there we have it. I think young people these days must be properly oriented by these bodies so that as they grow, they get these orientations and come right into it to support the democratization process.
Tochiko, this is your forte. Your last thoughts on this. I think Mr. Kubed has mentioned young people. Let's talk about that briefly as we round up this conversation.
Okay, thank you so much for the privilege. As we round up, I just want to say we should all keep on doing what we need to do. The media, thank you for what you guys are doing, for what I'm doing, what Prof is doing, what Melissa is doing, and everybody. I just think we just need to keep on pushing because we need capacity in our young ones. From where I stand, the work is extremely overwhelming, overwhelming. The level of enlightenment, the level of consciousness, it's growing. It's not low. I won't say it's low. It's growing because you just need the right set of people who are triggered on. So we keep on pushing, we keep on advocating, we keep on talking every day, and we keep on believing. Thank you.
All right, Melissa, I didn't give you the chance to talk about young people's involvement. Please go ahead and briefly.
Yes. As a young person, I'm so excited to talk about this. They may be a young person listening may be asking, so where do I go from here? What do I do? And maybe not just a young person, but anyone that truly cares about this continent. There are conversations that are happening all around this continent about coming back or bringing Africa as priority, thinking about our country differently. And one of those, I'll just talk about the one that I know that is the most recent, that is happening very soon, is the Africa at the Center convening. And these are the conversations that we must be part of. And what that is we are bringing in stakeholders. You're talking about ECOWAS, stakeholders, governments, civil society actors, to just rethink again, what is the future of our continent? What do we really need to do to be able to move the needle, to move Africa forward? And this is like one big inaugural convening that is happening at in Accra from the 1st to the 3rd of September. You can just type www.waxi.org and you'll see information around that. I think this is a conversation starter for our continent, and I'll encourage everybody listening to me to register for that conference and participate.
Melissa, you're going to pay me for that heavily. We'll send you the invoice. We'll send you the invoice. Definitely. But I want to thank you, gentlemen and lady, for making this conversation worth it. Thank you so much, Mr. Dabakat. He is the Executive Director, Center for Innovative Governance and Sustainable Development there in Plateau, Nigeria. We also have Mr. Tochukwu Emmanuel Femene, governance expert and a fellow, the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. And of course, we have Miss Melissa Jusisimo, policy economist and international development practitioner at the West Africa Civil Society Institute, WAXI. Thank you so much for being a part of this program and making this first session a delightful one to follow. Thank you again and have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We're grateful. Bye.
All right, well, stay with us. We'll be back with the second half of the program.
Citizens Hour on West Africa Democracy Radio. It's your time to speak.
All right, welcome back. In this second half of the show, we shift our focus to the Gambia, where the December 2026 election is being viewed as an important test of whether the country can consolidate democratic reforms and move beyond the legacy of concentrated executive power. So the debate is bigger than Barrow versus the opposition, and it's also about whether Gambian political parties can develop a culture of cooperation, compromise, internal democracy, and issue-based politics. Well, just Friday yesterday, First Coalition redraws opposition map ahead of December polls as United Democratic Party and 6 other political parties and movements form the Gambia First Coalition ahead of the polls. Now, the new alliance is the latest attempt by opposition parties to unite their strengths and challenge President Adama Barrow at the polls. It follows the UDP's withdrawal from a broad opposition coalition process over disagreements on the structure and rules of negotiations. Before we get into the conversation, well, let's take a report from our Banja correspondent, Rose Samarakate.
led by UDP, 6 political parties, some of whom are established, and 2 movements formally signed their agreement on Friday, presenting a united alternative ahead of the December 5th presidential election. The coalition says its ambitions extend beyond presidency to parliamentary, mayoral, chairmanship, and council elections. Momodu Diba is the mediator of the Gambia First Coalition GFC.
We shall not criticize individual personalities, but we shall stay steadfast in scrutinizing the Adama Barrow government, in holding them to account, and in empowering our people to hold them to account. That is not negotiable.
The new coalition now joins the growing field of opposition formations seeking to challenge President Adama Barrow and the ruling NPP in December. Dr. Papa Fall, leader of the Gambia People's Advancement Party, now a member of the GFC, stressed that the parties intend to work together beyond the presidential election.
Gambia First Coalition and the UDP Alliance will ensure that we work together tirelessly to make sure we bring solace our people so desperately aspires. Together, we will implement practical solutions that will make meaningful impact on the daily lives of our people.
For Usainu Dabo, leader of the United Democratic Party, UDP, the opposition must put aside individual ambitions and unite around the goal of forming a government. Dabo reaffirms his commitment to the Gambia First Coalition.
I welcome all of you. I thank you for your support. I also thank you for making the Gambia a priority and aligning with the UDP and pledging to work with us in the pursuit of the greater good. We are one team, and you are the team. The campaign should be and will be collective. This is the campaign of each of our alliance partners in every aspect. To the other opposition parties not present here today, we extend our hand to each and every one of you. Let us work together to save our country.
From Coalition 2026, led by Talib Bensouda, to Gambia First Coalition, chaired by Usainu Dabo, the December election is shaping up as a contest not only against the incumbent, over which opposition bloc can convince Gambians that it has the unity, strength, and credibility to lead the country. For WADR, Rose Samara Kates, Banjul.
All right, welcome back from that report there, giving us an overview of what transpired in the last 24 hours in the Gambia as the presidential election heats up towards December. Well, let's quickly go neck deep into the conversation as we don't have much time on hand. Well, joining us from the Gambia, we have Barrister Hassan Martin, and fondly called Lawyer Martin. He is the spokesperson, Coalition 2026 Mediation Committee. We're also being joined by Dr. Malang Fai, a political scientist, public policy analyst, and lecturer at the University of the Gambia, UTG. His professional interests include political institutions, public policy, governance, and democratic development. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and welcome to the program.
Yes, good morning, Peter.
Indeed, welcome. Well, I'd like to start with Dr. Fai. I mean, it's quite interesting from the report. 1 minute, we were talking about the 2026, Coalition 2026, and another moment we're hearing the First Gambia Coalition. Take us through all of this situation and how this coalition arrangement can actually overcome the divisions that we've seen in the previous efforts.
Thank you, Peter. I think this is very important, and I think we must give credit to the United Democratic Party for forming their own coalition with this party-led coalition. Because if you understand Gambian politics, in 2016, there are several coalition building blocks which was initiated. We have the APEX, we have the Team Gambia, we have the CMC, and other initiatives. However, there is a huge paradox in Gambian politics because opposition have been trying to unite for multiple times, but the mechanism of forming that unity has become a huge problem. And this leads to a lot of fragmentations. And also, if we look at Gambian politics historically, this has been a challenge since 2001 to then 2006. the process of who is going to lead a coalition has always been a huge challenge for Gambian politics. And with the formation of the CMC, many Gambians were hopeful that it can result to something. But we have seen the UDP left, and then they went on to form their own coalition, which is party-led coalition, which made a lot of sense because coalition building is not only about bringing a lot of people together, but it's about bringing substantive parties who can make the difference, and also trying to bring in mechanism where it will allow parties to have unity and also build a very strong building block where after the coalition building, what happened next would be very clear in the eyes of every partner.
Indeed. Well, Lawyer Martin, it's good to have you on the show. Well, tell us about this Coalition 2026 and what just happened yesterday.
Well, good morning, Peter, and good morning, Maline. What we saw yesterday is just another coalition block. Peter, the issue here is that I agree with Maline, but to some extent I disagree that we should all go by party-led coalition. That is what this what they call this, I don't know, coalition force Gambia. For them, it's an issue of going with a party-led. That means the party, and then these all small alliances they have to join them into the election come December 2026. That is their approach. We respect that. But there is another approach, Peter, which is the candidate-led, or if you want, independent-led. That's what's the other coalition 2026. That's the one I am in. That's the one where we have Mayor Talib Bensouda.
Yeah.
This is going to be another approach, if I may. This is going to be another approach to go to the elections in December. So there would be parties. We already have also parties and movements that we align ourselves. So basically what you hear, the aim here is that probably these elections, it would be like a three-horse race. Either people who go for a candidate-led or a party-led in the opposition against the incumbent. But if we remember, just quick one, that in in 2016, there were three players. So the approach was that there were three-horse race. So I think Gambians are optimistic because finally, many of the Gambian voters, they are fed up with politics. And the issue is here, most of them will end up being what we call the undecided voters. That is where the issue of this candidate-led will help to defeat the incumbent.
Quite interesting. Well, you both seem to have given me a new name, Peter, but my name is Imo.
Imo, sorry. Oh, what I saw. Okay.
All right. Well, let me come to you, Dr. Fai. I mean, do you see a danger that coalition negotiations become more about sharing political positions than agreeing on people-centered policies?
Peter, I will just say this thing. What we are seeing in Gambian politics is really telling because we are seeing a huge number of political parties being formed and huge number of movements being formed. And most of these people, their main interest is personal interests. Because for some of them, they think the repeat of 2016 can happen and then they can hold on to an ambassadorial position or a ministerial position. And this is where the problem lies, because now for the big guns, when we talk about unity, the most fundamental challenge is now who is going to lead. Because, for example, what we see with the CMC, just to be fair to them, they have achieved partly of their objective, but we can say that they have failed as well. Because at the beginning, how many political parties were there and how many withdrew? Because, for example, today, you cannot tell me the biggest opposition party since 1996 should have the same vote in choosing a candidate with a movement who cannot even bring you 1,000 people. So these were the fundamental problems some other parties saw, and it led to their withdrawal. And there are also a lot of other things. For example, the chairman leaving and some other issues. That shows these political parties are not really serious in what they are doing. Because for example, Gambians, we were expecting them, their disagreement to be on policy issues, on mechanisms, how they're going to run the country after they have won. But the only problem we are saying now is who is going to lead, who is more sellable to Gambians. And this is not the actual problem Gambians want to see being addressed now. Because, for example, in 2016, what happened was that there was a common enemy, and this common enemy was Jammeh. And because of this, all these parties came together, and of course, they have a very good model, which to replicate at this particular time, I think will not work for them.
But,
and I think
but
that
why can't we have that same model? I mean, them coming together and doing the same thing that happened in 2016.
Because for the big parties, the model might be very dangerous, because you can have somebody with a small party to come and lead the coalitions, and at the end, when this person is in power, you don't dictate him how he's going to run. So he can just trust out all the agreements you have. And this is, for example, what we've seen in 2016. When Barrow came to power, people like Khalifa were saying we had an agreement, and some came out and said we don't have any agreement. What powers does the coalition have when the person is running the government to challenge that person? You go to the street, it doesn't end anywhere. We have seen the 3 years Jodna movement and what they have done in the street. It is just 1 week protest, and at the end, that's the end of it.
Lawyer Martin, do you think this is a problem of quality of leadership, where initially in the first coalition, people thought, yes, finally we have one coalition, that may want to face the ruling party, but as it is, we are seeing an emergence of a new candidate to represent that coalition, which forced the UDP to withdraw and have its own coalition as it is. Is it a problem of a quality of representation?
Absolutely. The word quality is the argument now. It was like if somebody watched the past weeks, I was telling them, people, Peter, they always claim numbers, referring like my brother says there. Well, UDP was the largest party if you refer to the elections of the 2021. Respectfully, yes. On data, yes. But Peter, do you know that there were new emergency of these political parties who are coming with a different wave? But again, Gambia needs a quality leader. I mean, as I listened to your previous statements with your fourth segment, the issue of culture in politics. You see, Peter, I've been there in 2016. I have been there in 2011. I was one of the people who were coordinating and very much involved in our Gambian politics. I may agree that UDP, they got numbers, for instance. These small parties that the Gambia Force, they are claiming for numbers, but their numbers are not enough to defeat the incumbent. And therefore, then you may need the word quality of leadership. That's what you mentioned. If you listen to yourself. Now, it is the quality of leadership that may help you to attract, Peter, the other numbers that you may need so that you can get something sufficient to defeat the incumbent. So our major problem now, if you see these smaller parties disagreeing with bigger parties, is the issue of leadership. It's not about position, as my brother mentioned. Some of us, Peter, I said to them, I'm not going to commit myself to take any ministerial positions. I will be a project manager. We have Mr. Talib Bensouda to be the project leader. He is not the owner of the project. It's about he is going to lead us. But it is all boiled down to the quality of leadership. What is quality, Peter? You have to have integrity. You have to have a good judgment, good character. You have to bring hope. A leader also, you have to bring somebody entrusted, not a leader, somebody. The thing about some of these party-led, Peter, is that people end up with not a quality leader, because the problem is that some of them have been there before and they make big mistakes, and they already saw their character that, the government is not about, kingsmanship. For them, what we call mansaya, bur, ngur, having all these privileges as a president, and then you forget the mission. Here we are, Peter. This is our argument. Mr. Bensouda, even the leader of Coalition 2026, he is not going to own anything. We have already pegged a lot of flag bearer agreement. that will peg him to do the job for the Gambian. It is now time for us to make sure that our leaders are held accountable. And we have already put a contract, a social contract that he has to focus and do. This is where Coalition 2026 is different from this Gambia Force agenda. Because the Gambia Force agenda, what happened, Peter? We have all these presidents. I'm not against age. I'm not discriminatory. But again, the country needs hope. The country needs somebody who can bring, new vision. It's also about this country is challenging. We are thinking as a
Lawyer
nation.
Martin, are you worried that we may end up having Usainu Dabo as the leader or candidate of this coalition?
No, candidate of his own coalition. That is, as I tell you, there is two approach here. The two argument is that we have party-led coalition and we have candidate-led coalition. Now, as I tell you, this is now where Gambia is going now. The issue would be, it may end up being a three-horse race. And these parties that the Gambia Force, as I say, they don't have, well, let me give you, Peter, just a scenario here, is that Gambia, our total votes here is almost 1 million. 1 million votes. And if we go according to the estimate of the IEC, we may end up with 1,100,000 votes, according to the new supplementary registration. But here is the thing. The party that is claiming that they have under 238,000 votes, the biggest party, out of 1 million, Peter, how many votes do we need to defeat an incumbent? So there is approximately another, 750,000 votes out there to be played. So you see now, if, for instance, I'm just giving, and out of that, Peter, Mr. Fai knows that Mr. Bentali Bensouda was within the camp of the UDP, that is Mr. Dabo's camp. Now they have break away from that camp. Now there is also Mr. Lamin J. Dabo who was in that camp. They have break away from that camp. So you see, so now that means that UDP is no more the strength they have in 2021 compared to now. So now these other camps, they will all go and consolidate. So it may end up being a third force. And Peter, in the history of Gambia, it was three-horse race to bring down Yahya Jammeh. So even if you, today, what Mr. Malain Fai is claiming, for instance, let's say all of us agree, all the parties agree, and we have one united force under Mr. Dabo. I can bet you, Peter, if Dabo and Barrow are alone in that fray in December 2025, I can bet you that Dabo, even if we all go under one umbrella and Mr. Dabo leads it, Peter, Gambians, Mr. Fai may know, it's about what you call that personality politics. They're not going to listen to policy. They will start complaining, Mr. Barrow is better than Mr. Dabo, Mr. XY. That's what we are avoiding. They will say that, a lot of judgments, of flaps of judgment when Dabo was there, because Dabo went up to the stage of a vice president. Well, he was also a foreign minister.
Martin,
so
let me hold your thought and throw that same question to Dr. Fai. I mean, we're talking about quality of leadership here, and Lawyer Martin has just painted a frame where you have, for instance, Lawyer Dabo and the incumbent. Let's look at the weigh them together. What will play out?
Right. I think this has been the issue. And I think this is one reason why Talib left the UDP. It still boils down to the same thing, which is leadership issues. Everybody thinks that I should lead. I would just say to Lawyer Martins that it's very dangerous to assume that age or personality is the very useful political variable. And once you had a judgment before you start a process, then it becomes a problem. You cannot unite people. We are not talking about all those things. For us, we are very neutral in the field. We are not in support of UDP. We are not in support of the NPP. These people need to understand the survey which was conducted recently. It shows that Gambians are not happy with the president, but the same Gambians would rather vote for the president if the oppositions are not united. And this was by Gambia Participate. You can find out this survey. And we have seen one of the groups which was asked in the survey, which is the GDC, who supposed to be in the coalition, joined the president. And if we look at Gambian politics, we need to understand geography plays a very important part in the way people they vote. So this is also important. I will agree to some extent because, for example, if you look at Talib Bensouda, he is very sellable candidate in Kanifing because he has proven it in Kanifing. He has going 7,000 more votes in the mayoral election than what UDP have gained in 2021, and that's tell you something. Is he sellable in the rural areas as well? So these are all questions they need to answer. So, but our position as analysis will say that their main problem is institutional problem. They have not learned from past lessons how to bring people on the table, how to negotiate on things, and to give Gambian a candidate. It's not about Dabo is old or is Dabo cannot win. It's how they sell Dabo to Gambians. This is also important. So you cannot just brand somebody as not winnable. And this is what the UDP saw, and that they left. Because even when they left, they said that one of the criteria which was put in by the CMC was that the candidate is somebody who is winnable or attractive, something like that. And I believe that it should be these political parties who should sit and trust out what should be the mechanisms, or what should be some of the agreements that they should abide on,
Well,
but not somebody just written something
Dr.
and
Thai,
just
from that survey by Gambia Participate, that shows that people may prefer to vote incumbent if the opposition is not organized. What do you think may likely play out if this drama continues till December?
What will play out is that we will see the president gaining upper hand, because it is already playing out, because now within the opposition it's very fragmented and they are accusing one another. They are pointing fingers. For example, we have Esam Baifal, who was part of the CMC, accusing the CMC and other Mayor Bensouda of playing foul play. UDP have been also accusing the committee of playing foul play. So now, as an ordinary Gambian would ask the question, do I really need to just change the leader, or do I need to trust the leadership with somebody when he comes in, he will make the real change? Because if the opposition portray Gambia as very bad, poor economy, high crime, migration, A, B, and C, and they cannot even agree within themselves, if they need to say to the Gambia, then what would that tell the voter? And this is where the problem lies. And if they damage one another, it only gives the incumbent higher probability.
Well, Lawyer Martin, are there assurances, or what do you think should be the assurances for smaller parties who may want to commit themselves fully to these different coalitions that we are seeing?
Well, thank you so much, Peter. As I say, Mr. Fay, definitely, yeah, he makes his own analysis. But as I say, it is not only the analysis of one is right over the other. And
Right.
there is a misconception, where he says that, well, the eligibility criteria says that there was something he says about, I think, a sellable or winnable candidate. We did not bring that, and we did not even reach to that level. UDP left in our negotiations just to correct some issues, because as I say, as more as we are now this thing, I was part of the CMC, and I took the coalition as a member, and still we have our chairman who is there. But despite that, we have come to our conclusions because we are using what they call the consensus model, to a consensus approach during those coalition talks that brought us to that logical conclusion. So as far as we are concerned, also he talked about accusations. Accusations is very easy for somebody to come and say this and this when they want something. And Peter, you made mention of it. All politicians, they all want to be leaders. So the issue here is that if they don't get it, they will go with their excuse. We respect with that. So Mr. Fay, just to align that one, that is what normally happens. UDP left because their own excuse. Somebody else left with their own excuse. If they want to make accusations and we make counter accusations, we know it. So I was there. That's why I say that everybody who came there, we know what was your purpose or your motive. But here is the thing, Peter. To your question, if I may come back, you see, if you understand Gambian politics, I respectfully agree, but I am also a political scientist. Also, I know this politics, and I've been there 2 decades. So maybe, Mr. Pai, for me, I also know the mindset of the Gambian voter because I run as a mayor. I also participated in building 3 subsequent, past coalitions from the NAG to 206, from 2011 and 2016. Probably that time, maybe, Mr. Fai. Here is the thing, Peter. On a quick note, the smaller parties, they should consolidate under a good coalition with a good leadership. That will help to defeat. Listen, Peter, the incumbent, do you know what? There was a statement, if I could have shared, Mr. Fai may know. Do you know that the incumbent says that they want a rematch with Mr. Dabo? Mr. Barrow knows, Mr. Barrow is from what? Is from UDP. Mr. Fai may know that. Mr. Fai, if you make your own research in the Gambian youth voters, and you come with a research, because the youth votes the youths are what, 60% or 65% of our population. You go and make your research there. I say you see Gambia participate also. Put out a research and tell us Gambians the type of leadership and who you believe that should lead. And you put the candidates there. Don't talk only about party-led or what they call candidate-led issue. The people in Gambia today, they are yearning for new leadership. Yes, they want Barrow to go, but they don't want somebody who is replica of Barrow, somebody who believes in that, these presidential privileges, somebody who has made a lot of mistakes, who has made a lot of distinct judgments. Mr. Faino, I don't want to start because it's becoming, Peter, it's not healthy. And because for one reason, I'm trying to avoid here. We have 3 months and a half to go. Yes. In politics, a week is a long time in politics. Even maybe next month, we could probably have a united force under a leadership that we don't know, like you just said. But here is the thing, that there is a lot of, Peter, just to conclude, there is a lot of parties now who are not in that Gambia force. There is also a lot of parties who are not in the coalition 2026.
Does that mean we will see more parties joining in that coalition in the coming days?
Hopefully, most of them, we now started seeing most of them joining because the other side, the one they signed yesterday, they only have one party. I think if it's 3 parties, and some of them, Peter, don't be taken by this thing. Mr. Fai knows that. If you talk about these smaller parties, you talk ADD and your Gambia GPAC. Mr. Fai, I know what you and I know. You can register a party in Gambia. But if you say that party pull 1,000 voters, they cannot. If you tell them that bring 500 voters, they cannot. Peter, one thing I want to tell you here, he mentioned that Mayor Talib Bensouda is already only known in KMC. Now the outreach has gone beyond the KMC, that is the Greater Banjul area. This is going to be a new Obama wave that is coming because we are targeting, and we are not coming with a personality politics. Let's tell Mr. Fai. Our strategy is changed to that. You remember, Mr. Fai, you've been hearing me. I am mentioning the project. There is definitely, and we are coming in the next few days to bring signing, and you will see how we are going to, approach the voters. We are working on a project to save Gambia, not to save personality. And it's not a project owned by the leader. It is some of us who have bring ideas together. And this is going to be far distinct with probably what the candidate, the party-led guys are going to bring. Because the party-led guys, Peter, he knows, Mr. Fai knows, why is one man fixated at only I want to be a president? So, Mr. Fai, that is the question. And number 2, why is Barrow saying that he wants a rematch with the same guy? And knowing very well that you, Mr. Fai, Barrow was in UDP. Barrow plays with the guy. He brings him up from his level and bring him on his stuff, and then there is no doubt. It will be, if we today have even the danger, Peter, let me tell you, for Gambian politics, Peter, the issue here is that we are on a minority rule. You remember Yaya Jammeh and Adama Barrow in 2016, and Mama Kande. Yaya Jammeh was defeated by 3%. Barrow get 43%, Yaya Jammeh get 40%. and none of them get above the 50% mark, which is the the majority rule, 50 plus 1. So Gambia still, we have this minority rule. Post past the post.
All right. I would like Dr. Fai to respond to all of this. He seems to know so much because you've been mentioning that he knows. Well, tell us, respond to what Lawyer Martin has been saying, Dr. Fai.
You know, when I started earlier, I made mention of these things, that you cannot just bring up a lot of political parties of movement and who have not been tested anywhere. And
go ahead.
Yeah, I said you cannot. I said this CMC does not learn their lesson, because all what they are facing now is institutional failures and institutional challenges which they haven't learned. Because today, you cannot tell me, I said it earlier, that there are certain parties, they cannot even bring 1,000 votes, and they are registered of this movement. And you don't expect them to have the same vote when it comes to selecting a flag bearer as bigger parties. And I think these were some of the things they never addressed. So that was the unity to form coalitions, but the process and the procedures were not clear since at the beginning. And this is why they partly failed. But I would say something. There is a big danger of coalition fatigue if they are not careful. We cannot be assuming, as political scientists, we cannot be assuming that Talib is sellable as a party.
If you're
let me just finish. That Lawyer Dabo is sellable, that Halifa Saleh is sellable, without studying the voting behavior of Gambians. So it's not my responsibility. I was in a show with the Verify. I said that most of these parties or these coalitions, they should have studied the voting behaviors of Gambians. At least that gives them an understanding of what actually Gambians want. Because,
and perhaps who to push forward as a candidate, right?
Exactly. So it should not be based on assumption that Dabo is old, we cannot put Dabo, and so on. This only creates problems. And when you have this fatigue, when citizens repeatedly hear their oppositions are close to joining, and later they are disagreeing on things, that symbol of hope becomes of a political threat to them. This can hurt them, the oppositions.
But do you see the UDP?
And they can eventually vote for the incumbent.
Yeah, Dr. Fai, just a minute, please.
Yes.
Do you see the UDP as a clog in this wheel of successful coalition? Because there's been so much talk about the UDP. Yes, it may be one of the most popular parties in the Gambia, but is it stalling successful coalitions?
In one aspect, we can say that, because if you see why UDP always demand the bigger share of the cake, is that they have a very strong base, and this can be generational voters, and this can be moved from one generation to another, just like the sociological model. For example, my father is UDP, that the kids are UDP. Of course, this is changing, but this is still true. And Lawyer Martin can attest to this. And if you go to certain regions, no matter what, UDP always wins. For example, in RRR, these are very strong bases they have, and they have very strong bases. And some other people, they don't have those bases as well. We are not objecting to the candidacy of Talib Bensouda, and I think some of us some time ago, we were saying, I think it would have been the best candidate if UDP has presented to Gambians. But things should not be subjective. We cannot be just subjective and think the way we think it's the correct way. But what I'm saying is things need to be done in a right way, where Gambians would have confidence in the coalition. And this is what we saw in 2016. Even though some of the parties were not happy on what was going on, they still kept quiet and go in good faith, because they know that we need change at that particular time. If it is the same thing, I'm saying the opposition parties must put their ambitions behind them and unite under one flag bearer. If not, they will be disappointed in the polls.
Lawyer Martin, your response to this, because you feel it's like you've been eaten
too. I had my brother there, Mr. Fai. Definitely, I like your arguments. But to the point here, understanding Gambian politics is a personality politics. That has been the concept for since 20, the mindset of most of these voters is if you put Fai or Martin, they start thinking about the personality. And I can say that Mr. Fai, definitely, back then in 2016, who was the UDP leader? Mr. Fai.
In 2016, it was no. And nobody, no, so we can, and as Gambians, we don't know anything about that.
Just answer my question. Who was the UDP leader?
No, I'm answering your question. I'm answering your question.
Answer my, okay, go ahead. Learn and then I'll proceed.
Leo Martin, please, we do not have much time.
In 2016, Barrow was the UDP.
Who was the UDP leader and where was the UDP leader? And they got somebody new that brought us change. And that previous leader, Mr. Dabo, has made 3 subsequent elections without winning the then incumbent. So you see now somebody who has been running 5 times, now going to the 6th time. I mean, sometimes we need to assess ourselves. Let's be realistic here. Mr. Fai, I can say that. Look at the position of Doi. Do you know that probably if the same man came out in 2016, we will have got a problem? You see, you have to accept also these realities, my brother. As much as I respect your analysis as an independent, as you claim, flip the coin also. Mr. Dabo has wrote 3 subsequent, 2001, 2006, 2011, up to 2016, when he was not there, we have a change. So it tells you something also that, and now the same man came in 2021. You see, I don't want to make it. You are making it, as I say, you know, I am in an opposition camp. I am trying to do an outreach. But again, I'm just trying to prove your point to Mr. Imo.
Yes.
To tell you this. The Gambian political mindset today, there is no political party who can claim, for instance, that 40 or 50% of Gambians, they have their independent mind and they are like undecided voters. This is where also our argument is. How do you win those people? Imo.
Yes.
I myself, I don't belong to political party. I work with political party. And there is a clarification for Mr. Fai. If you talk about CMC, the CMC was a service provider. We were not the deciders of this Coalition 2026. Let me clear that. You were mentioning CMC, the structure and the organization and so on. No. The CMC was to help and facilitate as a mediation team to help the coalition building process. We were not there. Even if the CMC, look at the CMC could have a capacity of 10 people, but we made it a capacity of 4. Later on, you say, that's what I want to clarify there. We were not, to make sure that you understand that.
Leo Martin, I'm afraid we have to go because we don't have time anymore on our hands. I'm afraid we have to go. We have to round up the program. But just 5 seconds, Lawyer Martin. 5 seconds, please.
Yes. Yeah, it will be open to a 3-horse race. This is going to be the game again.
Okay.
And the Gambian voters will look at a project that will fit them. And I can bet that if the Gambian people who listen to most of us, not an independent somebody in the office or making your own political survey, they listen to the politicians who are really with the voters. I definitely think that we can effect that change that is needed in 26 December.
All right.
We can defeat Barrow. There must be a hope and there must be that willing dots, not to base on this old culture of, analysis.
I will bring both of you on the show again.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Lawyer Martin, we have to go. Lawyer Martin, we have to go, please. We have to go. Thank you very much. It's been an interesting conversation. Barrister Hassan Martin, formerly called Lawyer Martin, their spokesperson, Coalition 2026 Mediation Committee, and of course, Dr. Malang Fai, a political scientist, public policy analyst, and lecturer at the University of the Gambia. Gentlemen, thank you so much for this great conversation. We will have it again. So long as the countdown to the election starts, we will have this conversation again. And to you out there watching us via YouTube, Facebook, we'll thank you so much for your time and listening on the radio. Thank you for being a part of the program. Well, up next is our Midday News with Abdullah Hassan. I am Imo Edet. Good afternoon.